Imagine being told a war is over, then refusing to believe it. Not for a day, not for a week, not even for a year. Imagine continuing to fight that war for nearly 3 decades after everyone else had gone home. It sounds impossible, but that's exactly what happened to a Japanese soldier named Hiroo Onoda. For 29 years, he hid in the jungle. For 29 years, he waited for orders that never came. And for 29 years, he believed World War II was still being fought. This is his story. The year was 1944. World War II was raging across the Pacific. Japan was losing ground, but many soldiers didn't know just how badly. Among them was a young intelligence officer named Hiroo Onoda. At just 22 years old, he was sent to Lubang Island in the Philippines. His mission was simple: slow down the advancing Allied forces, destroy enemy supplies, gather intelligence, and most importantly, never surrender. Before leaving, his commanding officer gave him one final order. No matter what happened, do not give up, do not take your own life, and do not surrender. The army would return for him someday. At the time, Onoda believed those words completely. He had no idea they would shape the next 30 years of his life. Only a few months later, American forces landed on Lubang Island. The Japanese defenders were quickly overwhelmed. Many soldiers were killed, others surrendered. But Onoda refused. Along with 3 other soldiers, he fled into the dense jungle. From there, they watched the war unfold from a distance. Soon, they lost all contact with Japan. No radios, no messages, no way of knowing what was happening beyond the island. Then, in August of 1945, World War II ended. Japan surrendered. The fighting was over. Millions of soldiers laid down their weapons. Families celebrated. The world began rebuilding. But deep in the jungle of Lubang Island, Onoda never got the message. Or rather, he didn't believe it. The first signs came from the sky. Leaflets drifted down into the jungle. They announced that the war was over. Japanese soldiers were instructed to surrender peacefully. To most people, that would have been convincing. To Onoda, it was proof of enemy deception. He examined the leaflets carefully. Something felt wrong. He believed Allied forces were trying to trick him into revealing himself. After all, why would the enemy simply tell him the war had ended? It seemed too convenient. So he ignored the leaflets. Months passed. Then years. More leaflets arrived. Newspapers appeared. Messages from family members were delivered. But every piece of evidence only strengthened his suspicion. He became convinced it was all part of a massive propaganda campaign. The war, he believed, was still going on, and his mission was not over. Life in the jungle was brutal. The 4 soldiers survived by stealing food from local farms. They ate coconuts, bananas, and whatever they could find. They lived in makeshift shelters. Their uniforms slowly fell apart. Their weapons rusted. But they kept them functional. Every day was spent watching, waiting, preparing. The jungle became their entire world. And over time, that world began to shrink. One soldier eventually surrendered. The others considered him weak. Then there were only 3. Years later, another was killed during a confrontation with local police. Then there were only 2. Still, Onoda remained committed. The army would come back for him. It had to. As the years passed, the world changed dramatically. Television became common. The space race began. Humans landed on the moon. Entire generations grew up. Yet Onoda knew none of it. While the rest of the world moved forward, he remained trapped in 1945. Occasionally, search parties entered the jungle. Some called his name. Others used loudspeakers. Family members begged him to come home. But Onoda viewed everything through the lens of a soldier at war. Any attempt to contact him was interpreted as enemy trickery. His mission was clear: hold out until receiving direct orders from a superior officer. Nothing less would convince him. In 1972, something happened that shocked Japan. Onoda's final companion, a soldier named Kinshichi Kozuka, was killed during a confrontation with local authorities. For nearly 3 decades, the two men had survived together. Now Onoda was completely alone. The news made headlines around the world. People were stunned. How could anyone still believe World War II was happening? Yet, there he was, a lone soldier hiding in the jungle, still carrying a rifle, still waiting, still fighting a war that had ended 27 years earlier. Then came an unlikely hero, a young Japanese adventurer named Norio Suzuki. Suzuki had a strange goal. He wanted to find 3 things: Lieutenant Onoda, a panda, and the abominable snowman. In that order. Most people laughed, but Suzuki traveled to the Philippines and entered the jungle. Unlike previous search parties, he approached the situation differently. He wasn't there to capture Onoda. He wasn't there to trick him. He simply wanted to talk. And incredibly, he found him. The meeting was surreal. One man had been living in the modern world. The other had spent decades frozen in the past. Suzuki explained that Japan was at peace. The war had ended long ago. Millions of people knew Onoda's story. They wanted him to come home. But Onoda remained firm. He would only surrender if his commanding officer personally ordered him to do so. It was the same condition he had held for nearly 30 years. Most people would have considered that impossible. But Suzuki wasn't ready to give up. Back in Japan, authorities tracked down Onoda's former commanding officer, Major Yoshimi Taniguchi, the man who had given him his final orders in 1944. Now nearly 30 years older, Taniguchi traveled to Lubang Island. There, deep in the jungle, history caught up with itself. On March 9, 1974, the former officer met Onoda face to face. He formally relieved him of duty. The war was over. His mission had ended. He could finally stand down. For the first time in almost 3 decades, Onoda accepted the truth. The following day, he emerged from the jungle, still wearing parts of his old uniform, still carrying his rifle, still carrying the sword issued to him during the war. The weapon still worked. So did the rifle. Thousands watched as he surrendered. The world was fascinated. Some saw him as a symbol of loyalty. Others viewed the story as tragic. A man who had lost nearly 30 years of his life chasing orders that no longer mattered. Either way, nobody could deny the sheer determination it took to survive for so long. Imagine waking up one day and discovering that nearly 3 decades had passed. The world you remembered no longer existed. Technology had transformed society. People had aged. Entire chapters of history had come and gone. That was the reality Onoda faced. He had entered the jungle as a young soldier. He emerged as a middle-aged man. The war had ended in 1945. But for Hiroo Onoda, it didn't truly end until 1974. His story remains one of the strangest chapters of World War II. Not because of a great battle, not because of a military victory, but because of one man's refusal to believe the war was over. Whether you see it as loyalty, tragedy, or something in between, it's a reminder of how powerful belief can be. Sometimes it can help a person survive impossible circumstances, and sometimes it can keep them trapped long after the world has moved on. For nearly 30 years, Hiroo Onoda waited for orders. In the end, those orders finally came, just decades too late.